Live from our studios in Kingstown, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. It's your favorite Thursday night show, Up Late with Sehon Marshall. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the host of tonight's show, Sehon Marshall.
And good evening. Welcome to this another edition of your favorite Thursday night program, Up Late with Sehon Marshall. I'm your host, Sehon Marshall, and this is the program for today, Thursday, September 25th, 2025. For those of you who are joining, thank you so much for being a part of our program. And as always, I'm going to ask you to share the live on your page, on your account, so that other individuals are able to see this program. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to share it as I do the same thing, right? And everybody is want to know what is in my cup. And please don't ask me tonight. All right, so the program is up. I see it's running. And I am going to try and ooh, Lord have mercy. The lighting is good. Ooh, I look handsome. Um, right, hold on. I'm sharing. Don't bother with me rambling and rambling. Where are we? There you are. All right, and already I see some people are on. So I'm just sharing it. Please share it on your platform. All right. All right. Ansel, good evening to you. I see you, and I'm glad that you have joined. Right. So this evening we're going to have an exciting program, well, a very informative program, as we touch on a number of issues, and most of them international, because as you may or may not know, we are currently having the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, and so I wanted to focus a little bit on that, um, and some other things that are happening in our region. And then at the end, I would come home to deal with some specific, or at least something very specific that I think I want to touch on tonight's program. So let's start with a particular disturbing case that happened in the region a few weeks ago, and happened more than once. A few weeks ago, it was reported in the American news that a ship, a vessel, a boat, speedboat, was bombed using drones in international waters. That ship was going somewhere. There is no evidence as to exactly where the ship was going, but you see videos of it. And then the next thing you know, a bomb hit the ship and it was blown up. 11 individuals on the ship were killed. Later on, the US government confirmed that this was action taken by the government of the US against what they said was a ship carrying drugs. This was done twice. This was done twice. The story from the US authorities was that these two vessels were carrying drugs, and this is part of their counter narco terrorism thing, that trade that is going on. They're saying we're trying to prevent drugs from coming into the US. And so the drugs that are coming from South America, we are intercepting it and we are dealing violently with these individuals, these drug runners. Now, some individuals in our country were seen and heard celebrating that. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, uh, Kamala Bissad, Kamala Persad Bissessar, uh, was heard celebrating this and supporting the actions of the US authorities, and more specifically President Trump, in what she referred to as cleaning up or ridding the region of these what the U.S. refer to as narco terrorists. Now, there are a few things about those actions that should cause concern for you. The first thing is that the ships, the boats, the vessels were in international waters. They weren't in Vincentian waters. They weren't in the U.S. waters of the U.S. coast. They were in international waters. That is the first thing. And so no nation has the right, no nation has the right to um, bomb a vessel in international waters, even if the vessel appears threatening. Now, if the vessel is in your space and it's threatening, you have the right of self-defense. But in international waters, there is no threat. There is no imminent threat that anyone can say the the US failed, and so they took defensive actions regarding that threat. That's the first thing. But the second thing, and most important of all, is the way it was done. That was an execution of individuals. And if you're following the news over the last couple of months since the coming into office of the President Donald Trump, there has been what many in the US have been referring to as the erosion of due process, where individuals who have been arrested or who are arrested in the US are being denied due process. And in the same way that is happening in the US, this incident in international waters is also an example of that. Now, let us, for example, take the argument that, in fact, those vessels were carrying drugs, so that the occupants of the vessel were participating in a criminal activity, and that of the drug trade. There is something called due process. In normal civilized societies, what would happen? They should be arrested, they should be tried, and if convicted by a court of law, then those persons will be sentenced to whatever the punishment is. I think those who are rejoicing miss the point that the US authorities essentially accused the occupants of the ship, and without any court of law, they became the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And they murdered, in the first instance, 11 persons on a ship, on a vessel, and in another instance, 3 persons on another vessel. That's 14 people murdered within a week without due process. Think of it this way. Think of it that a boat is coming from Union Island to St. Vincent mainland, and the Coast Guard of St. Vincent sees the vessel coming up and decides, I believe at the speed that vessel is going, that vessel is carrying drugs. And so they open fire on the vessel, killing everyone. What would our society say? What do you think would be the response of members of our society? They would be outraged, and rightfully so, because the law does not give the Coast Guard the right to murder people at all. Nothing gives the US or any government the right to murder people in international waters without due process. What is to stop them? As a JetBlue aircraft takes off from AIA heading to JFK, and they say, I believe on that JetBlue aircraft were some terrorists coming in to hurt the US, and so I'm going to blow that plane up. what then? And it's not far-fetched, because what is important to me as someone trained in the law, and it should be to you, is that there has been zero evidence presented, zero, of any drugs, of where they were going, or anything of that matter. And even as I said, even if there was in fact narcotics on that ship, intercept, arrest, try, convict, sentence. It's called due process. And every individual is entitled to due process. As a matter of fact, one of the discussions that is being had in the US with regards to immigrants and the way immigrants are being deported, just taken up by ICE, thrown in a facility and then shipped out, is that those immigrants are robbed of due process. And as mainly right-wing conservatives argue that, oh, they're immigrants, they're not entitled to due process because they're not citizens, they're undocumented, they're illegal. Others have taken the pains to point out the Constitution doesn't say every citizen, it says every person. And the interpretation of every person in the Constitution by most is that it doesn't matter whether you are a citizen or an immigrant. As long as you are a person, you are entitled to due process under the law. And so those 14 individuals in total who were murdered in international waters without due process, that should be an ominous sign and a sign of danger for all of us. It means that we have a neighboring power that can and often runs roughshod over international law, because what they did is against international law. And we should be concerned because these actions threaten things like the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Sure, absolutely, they were not in any country, so there was no violation of territorial integrity. But the fact that they were in international waters and they were not citizens of the US, you cannot murder the citizens of another country just like that. And so we look at these things and we must become concerned about the broader ramifications of these type of actions. And I was happy when I saw, in support of statements made by our own Prime Minister, Dr. Al Gonsalves, the Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, coming out and speaking to the idea that we want our region, the Caribbean region, to be a zone of peace. We don't have armies in the Caribbean, you know. Never mind you hear about this one a defense force and that one a defense force. When it comes to what the US has in terms of an army, no other country in the world has it. As a matter of fact, they spend 10 times more than all the other countries combined, the big spenders combined. So we in this region are no match. And at any time, if they want to challenge us and challenge us militarily, we have no answer. We are going to be just bowing our knees and bending our knees at their mercy, because they have the power, they have the might. And so you may not, you may have heard the news, you may have seen images of it, and you may not have taken it, a big deal. You scroll past, it's not St. Vincent, it's not Vincentians, it's international waters. They really touch me, and after all, they were carrying drugs. Look, as someone trained in the law, and this is the point I want to make. Even if, do you remember the story, the incident, not a story, of the young man who committed the gruesome murder of a young lady in Tokyo in front of everybody? Even though everybody saw him do that, you notice the police didn't go there and kill him and shoot him up. Why? Because he deserves. He is entitled. It is his right to have due process. As angry as individuals might have been, even though everybody saw him commit the crime, they still had to arrest him, charge him. He would be entitled to a fair trial. It is up to the prosecution to present their case beyond reasonable doubt, for the jury to convict him, and then he was sentenced at the end of a trial. Now, in international waters, those guys in the vessel could have been intercepted, and with cooperation with any number of countries, they could have been arrested, and they could have been tried and so forth in any jurisdiction, whether through extradition or what have you. I was just reading earlier today that over 8,700 pounds of cocaine was seized in Florida. So, in Florida, in the US, the cocaine is seized. Nothing blow up, nobody get murdered. But in international waters where they're Venezuelans, you bomb them, no cocaine is retrieved, no drugs that you're talking about is retrieved. There is no evidence of drugs, but you have 14 people dead. But in the US itself, in Florida, you have 8,700 pounds of cocaine retrieved through two different drug busts. But you ain't not nobody get shoot up or bomb up. Why the difference? Why the difference? How is it that you intercept and you charge and whatever when it's in Florida, but in international waters you're assassinating, you're murdering individuals? I don't know of the guilt or innocence because it's not my role. The role of the U.S. government, the role of the Trinidad government, to proclaim anyone guilty. That is the role for a court of law. That is the role of a court of law. And these aggressive tactics by the U.S. authorities cannot be supported. And governments in the region must come together and work with the US or neighbor in, yes, ensuring the stem the flow of drugs going up and down or region, but it has to be done within the confines of a legal framework and not in a mafioso type of way where you just blow up a ship, you blow up a vessel, kill everybody on board because you believe they're carrying drugs, and no investigation, no facts, no evidence presented to prove your case. And even if, in fact, like I keep saying, the ships were laden with drugs headed for the US, there's something called due process. All right? And so that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. I want to touch on that so that we understand what is happening in our region. Now, of course, the broader picture of the issue with Venezuela and the US, where the US started moving ships in the region with this back and forth with Venezuela, the aggression with Venezuela. So, what happened with these ships could be just a small part of the greater aggression, but we'd wait and see. All right. All right. Hippolyte John says greetings, greetings, greetings. Oh, for Uncle Bob. Okay, I know Uncle Bob. Yes, yes, yes. I see Sylvina is there. Good night, good night, good night. Kojo and all of the others. Ev, good night as well. All right. The next thing I want to speak about, and I started by talking about the United Nations General Assembly 80th session, is the fact that something remarkable has happened over the last couple of days. It is remarkable in the context of the war on Gaza, and many individuals have been terming it a genocide on Gaza committed by the state of Israel. So far, you've had over 60,000 deaths. Gaza has been reduced to rubble, essentially. And that is why many are saying it's a genocide, because clearly the intentions and the actions seem to be one intended to get rid of a population in part or in whole. There's nowhere for anyone to live. It is inhabitable. And the fact that this can go on for 2 whole years unabated as the world sat and watched, and certain governments essentially blessed this, supported it, participated in it. That to me is something I believe the history of the world, when it is written, this time period would damn a lot of us, a lot of countries, a lot of governments that sat idly by and said nothing, or even more so, supported what was going on, pushing the narrative that Israel has a right to exist and Israel has a right to defend itself, and we condemning October 7th and we condemning Hamas. But at the same time, you see what Israel is doing, and Israel is carrying out serious atrocities, and the world seem to be quite silent on that. Well, during this week, some of the closest allies of the United States broke ranks with the United States by recognizing officially the state of Palestine. The United Kingdom recognized the state of Palestine, and so for the first time, the flag of the embassy of the state of Palestine was raised officially in the UK. Canada recognized officially the state of Palestine. Australia recognized officially the state of Palestine. France recognized officially the state of Palestine. All of this happened this week. As a matter of fact, there was a resolution in the United Nations that was supported by 145 members of the United Nations General Assembly. I believe 10 voted against and 12 abstained. Or 20 abstained. I can't remember the full numbers. But this was very positive for the state of Palestine. And of course, you fully expect, if you've been following the news, that the state of Israel responded angrily, of course, uh, essentially throwing temper tantrums in the UN, blasting everybody. As a matter of fact, Ev, you may be able to tell me more about it, but in the news, I was learning that the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel decided that he was going to call Kemi Badnoch or Badenoch, however the name is pronounced, uh, the leader of the opposition Tories party, and Nigel Farage, a guy who has 5 seats in the parliament. So this foreign affairs minister of the state of Israel decided that the government of the UK is now irrelevant. I'm going to speak to the opposition and a far right MP who had less than representation in the parliament. They're so upset. They're so mad. And they're accusing everyone of appeasing Hamas. And the world has appeased Israel for 2 years at the expense of over 60,000 people, most of them women and children. So in the UN, you have that. And as more and more countries uh, recognize the state of Israel, already you're seeing the isolating of the US in this regard. And it could just be the US and Israel. The thing is, with the power that the US has and the way it's shielding Israel in the Security Council, I guess they don't care as long as they have their very good friend and ally, the US, on their side. Israel has shown that it really doesn't care, and it's just going to continue what it's doing in Palestine. But whether or not it's too late, time will tell and history will reveal. But so far, I believe the official recognition of the state of Palestine by two permanent members of the Security Council this week, France and United Kingdom, two permanent members of the. So of the 5 permanent members, maybe it's only I'll have to check. Maybe it's only the US that doesn't recognize the state of Palestine, but the other four do. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I'll do the research, and I should have done it before the program. But those are, at least I know, 2 permanent members this week alone. The United Kingdom and France recognized officially the state of Palestine. So congratulations to the state of Palestine. Canada is another country with great influence. France, as I said, it's a P5, great influence. Australia, good influence, a country with influence. So I think as more and more countries, especially Spain did, Portugal also did this week. Yes, Portugal also did this week. Spain has already done so. Northern Ireland has done so. Sorry, the Republic of Ireland, sorry, has done so. So you have more countries doing it and recognizing the state of Palestine. And I believe this would go a long way in forcing the rest of the world, but specifically the US and Israel, to look seriously at a solution, a workable, viable solution for the people of Palestine so that they can live in peace and in dignity in their homeland. All right? So, as I told you, I'm dealing with a bunch of different things tonight. So a bit of things here, a bit of things there. Hopefully, it's informative for you and you understand some of what is happening globally. Eventually, we'll come home. I hope we have enough time. The next thing I want to talk about, continuing on the topic of uh, the UNGA, is the issue of the Republic of China, Taiwan. Now, every year, around the UNGA time, the General Assembly time, Taiwan seeks to get support from its allies and its friends to speak on its behalf on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly. And Taiwan is having a similar situation with regards to recognition in the UN because it is not being recognized as by many countries. And one of the reasons, or not one of, the reason why that is the case is because of the One China policy that is promoted by the People's Republic of China, where they're saying there's only one representation of the Chinese people, and that is the People's Republic of China. And so they have been blocking any chance, because it's the Security Council of the United Nations that determines who gets membership of the United Nations. And as a permanent five, the veto in the Security Council prevents Taiwan from becoming a member of the UN. As a matter of fact, Taiwan is excluded completely from international organizations because of China. Now, St. Vincent and Grenadines is a staunch ally of Taiwan and continues to promote Taiwan as a member worthy of acceptance in the international community. Now, this week, the ambassador of Taiwan to St. Vincent and Grenadines, the Honorable Fiona Fan, penned an article. And I'm going to read the entire article because I believe Vincentians need to know what this is about, understand why we lobby on behalf of Taiwan to be a full member of the United Nations. And Taiwan also has a case that it puts forward. All of the work it's doing, adhering to all of the global norms, best practices, even though it's not being allowed to fully function as part of international organizations, it still follows the norms of those organizations. It's remarkable. So the Honorable Ambassador wrote this article, and I'm going to read it to you. Okay, so thank you very much, Kojo. So 157 countries, well, it's 157 now. It was 140 something, of course. You had a bunch of countries within the last month or so. Like I said, Spain, Ireland, I believe Norway, and then this week alone, you had about 6 or 7 of them. So you had that bump up within the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to read the article from Her Excellency Fiona Fan, Ambassador of the Republic of China, Taiwan, to St. Vincent and Grenadines. It says, and I'm going to try and do my best to read. As the Nations ushers in its 80th anniversary, and there are merely 5 more years of the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development, Agenda 2030, with its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it is a crucial moment for the international community to reflect on the achievements made and gaps to be filled. Right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Republic of China Taiwan has been working with the government in a wide range of fields in our concerted efforts. Taiwan has been actively collaborating with the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. In the agricultural sector, we aim at introducing modern solutions and enhancing efficiency to improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture, which is in line with Sustainable Development Goal 2. In response to SDG 3, the Arnosville Acute Care Hospital is an example that will help transform local healthcare and improve access to medical services for those most in need. In terms of education, the Taiwan Scholarship and Youth Empowerment Programs have been assisting Vincentian youth in their pursuit for higher education and transition to become a part of the workforce in accordance with SDG 4. When it comes to information technology, we are committed to promote IT achievements with our allies through bilateral cooperation projects as part of our joint efforts in achieving SDG 9. As the 42nd Assembly of the International Civil Aviation Authority, ICAO, is taking place almost concurrently with the UN General Assembly, it is worth mentioning that it is worth mentioning Taiwan's endeavor, such as incorporating the Carbon Offsetting and Reducing Scheme for International Aviation, CORSIA, into their domestic law, as well as launching the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Pilot Program as our determination towards net zero. Even as we are not included in ICAO meetings and mechanisms, Taiwan still takes concrete actions in contributing to sustainable development of the global aviation industry. In a rapidly changing world where challenges transcend borders, leaving Taiwan out will be missing a significant part of the jigsaw puzzle. However, it is regrettable that despite Taiwan has shown time and again that we are willing to work with international partners, our participation in the United Nations system has been gravely hindered by China's distortion and misrepresentation of the UNGA's Resolution 2758. How could a resolution which never mentioned Taiwan be used to constrain Taiwan? Only the democratically elected government of Taiwan can represent its 23 million people in the UN system and other international organizations. As the world faces hybrid challenges from conflicts, disinformation to authoritarian regimes, gray zone tactics, Taiwan stands ready to defend the common values of freedom, democracy, and human rights cherished here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and by all like minded partners. Taiwan is committed to uphold the rule based international order through the global democratic value chain and actively advances the Diplomatic Allies Prosperity Project to promote mutually beneficial development. The 80th session of the UN General Assembly this year is themed Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights. Taiwan is right here working with St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in many other corners of the world map. We are calling on the United Nations and the international community to chip in with Taiwan as in our collective pursuit of leaving no one behind and achieving the sustainable development goals. We can do better together. And that was the article penned by the ambassador of Taiwan, the Republic of China, Taiwan, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Her Excellency Fiona Fan. A well penned letter, one that expresses the goal and the aim of Taiwan to be officially recognized as part of the international system and be included in the international dialogue, in the international multilateral system of diplomacy and negotiations. This is not a country with 100,000 people. There are countries, for example, like Nauru, I believe, with 10,000 people, full members of the United Nations. But Taiwan, with 23 million, is being excluded from the United Nations because of a feud that exists many years, many decades ago. And you know, as we spoke to the recognition of Palestine, we can see the similarities even as we talk about the recognition of Taiwan. And Taiwan is recognized, in many other aspects, it is so significant for trade in terms of semiconductors and shipbuilding and all of the other things that Taiwan, technology that Taiwan produces. Very critical for what is happening globally. And China trades with Taiwan. The US trades with Taiwan. Other countries trade with Taiwan. But they stop short of officially recognizing Taiwan because of its one China policy. Now, you know what happens, right? And it is a decision that we would have to make here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines coming soon. We are going to have to decide whether or not we are going to stick with Taiwan or not. We know that based on the People's Republic of China, you can't recognize both. China essentially, and thank you very much, Dexter, I know that they consider it a renegade province. China essentially determines and dictates other countries' foreign policy. They tell you, if you want to be my friend, you can't be Taiwan's friend. Simple. If you want to be my friend, the People's Republic of China, then you cannot be Taiwan's friend. And countries make the choice to be the friend of Taiwan, the friend of China, at the expense of Taiwan. St. Vincent and Grenadines says, look, you can't determine my foreign policy. You can't determine who my friends are. So if you don't want to be my friend, that's up to you. But I am willing. The day, and you've heard Prime Minister Gonzalez say this over and over again, the day the People's Republic of China drops that stipulation, we would recognize them. Because the issue is not us recognizing them. The issue is them saying, you cannot recognize Taiwan if you recognize me. Or put another way, if St. Vincent, if you want me to recognize you, then you can't recognize Taiwan. But the People's Republic of China, a developing a massive country with massive markets, we know what China does, leading a leading economy, as massive as you are, the decision of who our friends are can't be made by you. The decision of who our friends are as a nation, our foreign policy, cannot be determined in Beijing. That has to be determined in Kingstown. And so the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines is holding its ground. Now, later on this year, and I don't know how much later we can go, but there will be an opportunity for Vincentians to determine whether we are staying with Taiwan or we are switching to China. And I say this because we know the positions of the two political parties at play. We know there is the current government, the Unity Labour Party, that has ties with Taiwan and intends to continue its ties with Taiwan. And then there is the New Democratic Party that is in opposition that has clearly established, clearly stated that one of their foreign policy positions is that they will switch to mainland China, to the People's Republic of China. Now, I have said I have absolutely nothing against the People's Republic of China as a country. As a matter of fact, I've said before, as a diplomat in the United Nations system representing St. Vincent and Grenadines at the permanent mission to the UN, I negotiated with the Chinese delegation as part of the group of 77 on China, the biggest negotiating bloc in the UN. Now, never mind the name G77 and China. It's 100 something countries in the negotiating bloc. I don't know. I guess the original G77 was because of the number of countries that were in the UN at the time. So China is one of the members of the group of 77 on China, as is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so we negotiate as part of a negotiating bloc, even though we do not have official diplomatic relations. But going forward, if the government changes, it's clear. And so you, the voters, you, the citizens of St. Vincent and Grenadines, would have to determine whether you want to continue with Taiwan, and by so doing, continue with the Unity Labour Party, among other reasons, of course, because I don't think you're going to vote for Labour just because of the Taiwan issue. Or if you switch to China, among other things, of course, and vote, by extension, switch to the NDP, that will carry out that policy. And as I said, I'm sure that would not be the only reason you're going to vote for the NDP. I'm sure you'd have other reasons. I don't know what they are. Those are yours. They're personal reasons. That's fine. But that is the choice that we are going to have to make. So just as in the UN, there's that choice. Do we want China or do we want Taiwan? And countries in the UN system are saying, listen, I go with China and not with Taiwan. There are about 13 or 14 allies who say, I'm going with Taiwan, I'm not China. Among them, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts Nevis, I believe St. Lucia, Belize, in this region. The other countries are officially recognizing the People's Republic of China. So the decision as to where that goes later on this year is ours. Just like it's in the UNGA, it's, the position is going to come to us to say, hey, who do you want to recognize officially? Do you want to continue recognizing Taiwan? Or do you want to recognize China? And that is a decision, one of these decisions that our votes would reflect. All right? So you keep that in mind. We want to continue to wish the Republic of China, Taiwan well. We want to continue to encourage those countries that are recognizing Taiwan to continue to go and let their voices heard in the United Nations system, lobby on behalf of Taiwan, raise their voices on behalf of Taiwan, even as Taiwan continues to work with its allies to assist us in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And the article I just read from the ambassador here outline how Taiwan is working with St. Vincent in achieving SDG 1, 2, I think 4, 9, and other sustainable development goals. All right? You may not have heard, moving on, and just in case you haven't, I got to tell you now, that St. Vincent and Grenadines, and I think I mentioned it on this program already, St. Vincent and Grenadines is among 4 countries within CARICOM where come October 10th, there will be full free movement. Well, I mean, the thing is, I ain't plan to move and go nowhere. I don't plan to move to go to Barbados. I don't plan to move to Dominica or Belize, in as much as I have friends in all of those places. But I can tell you, listen, because there's so much action in St. Vincent and Grenadines now, especially specifically in the tourism sector, expect people to want to move to St. Vincent and Grenadines. Trust me. Expect people to move here, to take part, to participate in the growth and development that is happening. But the 4 countries, as I said, St. Vincent, well, let's go alphabetical order. Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Commonwealth of Dominica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So those countries are going beyond the CSME and the free movement of the CSME, and they're doing full free movement. If Vincentian, as of October 10th, would be able to pick up it to Ijaji bundle, as old people say, and move to Belize and work and live without requiring a work permit, residency permit, or anything of that sort, and be eligible to access emergency health care, primary health care, and education from primary and secondary schools. So we have essentially, as of October 10th, we would have all the rights of a Barbadian, essentially, if you move to Barbados. A Vincentian would have all the rights of a Belizean if you move to Belize. I need to start calling some of my friends in Belize, and see what's going on over there. Maybe I could get called to the bar over there. We can go to Dominica and have all the rights and privileges of a Dominican citizen if we move there. And keep in mind, do not forget that the converse would also be true, that a Dominican, a Belizean, a Barbadian would be able to move to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and have all the rights and privileges of a Vincentian. All. Now, I think that will benefit St. Vincent and the Grenadines because they're exporters that can move. Barbados, for example, that has a very much more developed tourism industry, tourism product. You can have people with certain skill sets that we don't have here. You have restaurants here and hotels here that would love to hire head chefs and so forth, skills that are not here yet. And we know the cost of trying to get a head chef out of Barbados, filing for work permit and this and that and so forth. Come, let me give an example. Let me give an example. Just recently, the Trump administration announced that they were increasing the fee for H-1B visas, which is work visas, to $100,000. $100,000. Right? And I listened to, I can't remember the Secretary of Commerce in the White House talking about it. And he was talking about the fact that, when you want to hire somebody in IT, don't hire anybody overseas. You need to hire somebody here, train somebody here. The idea is that somehow, when you make it that expensive for them to bring over IT specialists from whether it's India or where have you, that somehow they would start magically producing high-level IT individuals in the US who would get the jobs. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy, I think his name was a presidential candidate and somebody in the Trump White House. I think him and Elon Musk were the co-chair of the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. He's into IT, and he had said, listen, Americans ain't that smart when it comes to IT. We need to bring people over. He had said that. So, moving on the story, they have put this very hefty fine or fee to the H-1B visa, $100,000, intended to curb the influx of highly skilled immigrants, hoping that they would force the hand of these companies to hire locals, to hire Americans. But an interesting report showed that all that is going to do, here's the point I'm going to make, all that is going to do is tip the balance in favor of big companies. Because very small companies that were operating and could have brought over IT professionals from India and so on at lower cost can now no longer afford to do so. And so that is going to stifle those small companies. That is going to significantly hamper their ability to do anything. But the big companies, the Googles and the Apples and the big companies, the Infosys, they would be able to pay the fine easy, to pay the fee easy, and bring over people. So big tech would continue to dominate and grow, while the small companies are unable to do because they can't afford the cost of bringing in those highly skilled and highly trained individuals that are not available in the US. So how do I bring that home? Imagine a small boutique hotel, a Hotel Alexandrina, for example, wants to bring in a properly trained chef as part of the expansion. Without free movement, they have to look at applying for work permit and so on, all the fee structure for that individual, justifying it, and then however often, whether it's a 1 year or 2 years, keep renewing and reapplying that work permit and so forth. Now, a bigger hotel, for example, a Sandals, easy. I could afford that. I bring somebody from one of my hotels and I bring them over and it's done, easy, no problem. You know, a Marriott, easy. Beaches, easy. But a small hotel, Alexandrina, uh, uh, um, Maya Suites, and so forth. It's costly for them to do that. After the 10th of October, the fact that there'll be free movement and these skilled individuals are able to move and work and live without requiring work permit, without requiring residency permit, and so on, makes it easier for those hotels to acquire those skills, to work for them without the red tape and the high cost, and make them competitive. So now you can get a good chef. You can get a good hotel. Look, we're not used to having major and big hotels. And so when you want a hotel manager, they in St. Vincent a dime a dozen. And the few hotel managers out there, they probably in their boutique hotel, they work in there and so forth. It's the same people. Now, a hotel that is starting up doesn't have to look to poach somebody's hotel manager. When I build Sehon Marshall suites, I don't have to try and go and take the hotel manager from Maya or take the hotel manager from Beachcombers. No, because now I have free movement. I could look for a hotel manager out of Barbados, bring the hotel manager over. And of course, my idea would be bring him over, get somebody here to work as a highly motivated, ambitious individual to work as a deputy. So he gets trained. So after 2-3 years, my Barbadian hotel manager wants to go back home or he gets a new opportunity. Hey, that's fine. But I'm building capacity in the meantime. The free movement, if you look at it positively, we would be able to get skills that are not available here. And it would not be prohibitive for smaller business that can benefit tremendously from those skills. Tremendously from those skills. So I see the benefit of the free movement as is being promised, and I hope that Vincentian businesses, especially in the service industry, as we are now developing that industry, specifically tourism, I hope we embrace that and we see how this can work for us. We can see how this free movement can allow for skills to be brought into our country that can help to develop the areas where we are lacking. So I'm looking forward to that. So don't only think of it as Vincentians being able to go out, and for those Vincentians who want to go, that's fine. If you're a nurse and you could get a job in Barbados, or you could get a job in Belize, or you could get a job in Dominica, go right ahead. If whatever it is, you're able to move out, because we're training many nurses here. The education revolution turning out so many professionals, and you can get opportunities over in those countries, absolutely. But understand that there are areas where those countries are ahead of us, and we can benefit from their skill set as they move here freely from October 10th to as part of the free movement. All right, Steve. I see Steve. Good night, Steve. Hey, Val. Good night. Good night. Good night. Okay, so Val says October 10th. I'm sure it's October. Val says October 1st. I thought I saw October 10th in a release. But thank you so much for that, Val. Thank you so much for that. So yes. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope that many of our businesses welcome it. And I hope uh, we prepare ourselves so that we're not hearing the type of insular talk about people coming and taking jobs and people coming and taking jobs. I don't see us having a problem here where people are coming to take our jobs, because the level of training that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years through the education revolution, and I'm not just talking about academics, but I'm talking about TVET as well, significant training, but there's still areas where we are lagging, and there's space for individuals from other countries who have that skill, who have been more experienced, who are more experienced because they've been working in those sectors for a much longer time, and those sectors are much more developed than ours. There is space for them to come in and see it as I really wanted to see it, as skills transfer, the transfer of skills from individuals who are more experienced, who have higher training, and they can come here and work and train our locals to develop capacity in those areas. All right. So that is something I'm looking forward to. And I really hope that with everything that we've been doing for the last couple of years, as I said, 10, 15 years in training and education, that we are also able to take advantage of the free movement. And even as individuals would move to us, they would move southwards, because Belize is north, quite over in Central America. Barbados, well, Barbados is east, and Dominica is north. So they're moving over or down. We would also be able to move up and over. You know, there's a UN, not a UN, Lord. There's a CARICOM agency called the 5Cs, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center in Belize. I believe Eddie Jackson worked there for a little while. I believe there's a guy Otis, Otis, who worked there. So Vincent have worked at 5Cs, you know. So there's opportunities, or there are opportunities for Vincentians to move out and work and live without any hindrances, acquiring all of the rights and the benefits of members, of citizens of those countries. Well, that's where we bring our program to an end for tonight. I touched on 4 issues. I trust that you found them to be informative. I trust that you are now better informed about those issues that we touched on, and it's not even so much about you agreeing with my take on any of those things, but rather, especially on the first 2 issues that we touched on, being the recognition of the state of Palestine, and also the issue of the Americans murdering Venezuelans in open waters, in international waters. At least it brought to you a different perspective, another perspective, one that you may not have considered, one that you may not have heard. And at least you are able to sit down and reflect on it. And it may not change your mind, but at least you're thinking something, you have something additional to think about. Until next week, Thursday, God's willing, when I am back with you with another edition of Up Late with Sehon Marshall. Let me thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for sticking around. And on behalf of my producer, have yourself a good night.